stories, because the parents did not really know that we're there because they were too young to know that we did these things. So it's probably smart for us to start using this kind of information more frequently, especially with young people, because a lot of young guys and gals who go to school today don't see this kind of data in the classroom. And that's why when they come to space camp, they get a full shot, not only of the missions and what the equipment looks like, but we do everything we can to show them those visuals and remind them that those guys did successfully go to the moon and come back. And we haven't really done it since. That's the sad part of that story, is now we have to say we haven't really gone back. And it's hopefully we'll finally get that approved again. I hear, you know, the NASA people headquarters talking about they're going to have money to go back to the moon. Well, let's hope they do, because that's a great place to go and just park and study what else you want to do with spaceflight equipment. And the astronauts found out a lot about using space equipment to get there and to get back. And we haven't done that enough anymore, I don't think. Yes, sir.
So, from your PR perspective, then what are your thoughts on recapturing the imagination of the American public? Especially when you're talking about SLS, you said going to the moon, going to Mars. The public doesn't have that sort of imagination, that creativity, that what we had in the 60s. I'm kind of curious, from a PR perspective, what are your thoughts on how to recreate that?
I think we got to do more of a presentation, a sales pitch that lets them know NASA is alive again. You guys and gals can do what we did a hell of a lot better, a lot quicker, a lot more efficiently, and you also can engage and include other organizations that you may be working in with another country. I'm surprised we have not done a true international mission by the U.S. leading the pack and those other countries going with us. I think that's something that would be very valuable to us, because they know that we're smart enough to do it, but they don't have the wherewithal to do it, and we do. And that's hopefully something you'll see more. I think it's going to take leadership in our country. I think we could sell that. I think NASA could put together that pitch so easy, and we could take that thing all over the world and talk about it. Back in the back.
So, what was the value proposition back then that you were marketing? You know, what was it that you could tell people in the public, this is what justifies us spending tax dollars on this program?
Yeah, it was it was not easy because actually at first we really didn't tell them how much we were spending. It was not a subject that we dealt with. We would always say, well, that the president will tell you about that, or something like that. And then once we began to have these missions, they didn't care what we said about the money. The money was not a big deal because they saw something that they and their family had never experienced. So the investment was accepted, I think, but not before we went to the moon, because we all had jobs, and there were a ton of jobs all over the country trying to develop these rockets and train people to go to the moon, and we were spending big bucks in those days. But once we got that moon landing, that question never became a problem until the later part of all those missions being repeated. And that's when we had questions from the press saying, well, why are you going back? Or why are you flying another ship of people? We ought to do something else good for the country or whatever. So yes, it became a problem to keep it alive and accepted in the latter missions that we finally stopped. But remember, we canceled, I think, 3 missions of the Saturn V, and that was done by the President of the United States, and that was an embarrassment to us. The whole team was really affected by that. That's when we began to get people's jobs being eliminated all over the NASA family. And we lost those 3 flights. And it was crazy because we could have kept on going and had different kind of payloads on with the Saturn V. We didn't have to send guys every time. We could have sent equipment. And we didn't get to do it. Yes.
What is the Space Force going to do? Is it offense or defense?
Is the Space what?
The Space Force, what's it going to do?
You know, I don't know that much about the Space Force.
Nobody does.
I don't think they know much.
I really don't. I read what I find, but I don't know enough about who's running that thing and what their real mission is. If it's a government agency that's qualified or being controlled, then it may be one of those big deals that we heard about later. After we flew, we found out our Air Force friends were flying other things. That could be the situation. I just don't know the answer. Yes.
So you started, or Von Braun tasked you with starting up the Space and Rocket Center
Yeah.
and Space Camp. So what was the most difficult part of that, and what was the most rewarding part of that experience?
Allowing us to get off the base, to actually do this outside the gate, where Mr. and Mrs. America could stop and see it with their kids. You will not believe how many hours I spent in meetings hearing the argument, but going, we're going to keep it here. The Army will stay on their side, we'll stay on our side, and NASA will keep it alive and run it. And it went on for several weeks, well, probably maybe a year, I don't recall, but it was not something that a lot of our friends thought was smart, because it was actually permitting Americans and others to see and hear and learn about the real space program. And we weren't going to make it difficult to get on the base. So they gave us land, and that was a big deal, and let us build that building. And so we got a lot of equipment. To this day, I'm still amazed that we got that much stuff at no cost to the Space and Rocket Center. And it was a full story of Saturn V, Saturn I. We had several more vehicles. Some of them aren't even on display today, which I want to find out why we've taken off the old Redstone.
They're refurbishing them.
Oh, is that what they're doing?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
It's really being done.
Yeah, they're going to put them back out. Yeah.
Good. So that's going to be good when they see that whole family back.
Yeah.
Because that whole family grew up right here. And a lot of visitors that come to the Space and Rocket Center don't believe that this was done in Huntsville, Alabama. You will not believe how many times I had to explain. This is Huntsville, Alabama. It's been here for a long time, and we've done things.
Rocket
Yes.
City.
Yeah.
So I know this was never done before, but did you ever get some bad advice that you just ignored, or maybe just there was good advice back, when this was all going down? Did you get a lot of advice that you decided that's not good advice, or looking back it was good advice?
No, it didn't come from NASA. I think the community has always been supportive of the Space and Rocket Center. And it's a self-sustaining organization. And that's one of the real surprises. A lot of people don't realize that it basically supports itself. And, it's not being fed by NASA or Army with funding and so forth. It basically supports itself. And the public comes and pay to get in. So once we get that understood, we really don't have that much competition. Our friends at Houston don't appreciate that too much. We think we have a better show and a better story than they do. And the Cape used to not let anybody in. So we would show them more here than they could see at the Cape. Well, now the Cape has changed, of course. But I think now they're more likely to show NASA at the Cape, at Houston, and other places, which is good for NASA. And NASA's still alive and well. I'm amazed that agency still has those locations working all over this country. It's just very unusual, I think. So that's a good sign that they're smart enough to pick the right people that can make a contribution to the country, and they're doing it. Yes, sir.
I don't want you to get in trouble, but you talked earlier about some of the characters in the astronaut program. Do you have a story about wrangling astronauts that you'd be willing to share with a bunch of appreciative adults?
Well, the driving astronauts in the rental car, you never got to drive the car, by the way. You always rented the car, and it was always a four-door Cadillac. Shepard would never drive the cheapest car I had to drive because I was only allowed to drive a two-door car, cheap. He would drive the four-door Cadillac. And so we were at the Cape, and I said, it's time for us to leave, and I'll beat you back to the airplane, and I'll not exceed the speed limit. He says, you're on, Buckbee. So we go off, we pull out he's driving that big four-door thing. I'm on his two-door, I think it was a Chevrolet, and we go through two-lane road, and then we pull up on that four-lane road at the Cape, and they had the checkpoint where you have to go through. And you when you come in the checkpoint, they open you got to open your window, show your watch, and so as I got to the checkpoint, I was in front. I was able to pull in front, and as I got to the guard, and he checked my watch and said, "You're okay?" I said, "That guy behind me's got a gun." I get to the Cape. Airport, I'm at the airport, sitting on the trunk of the car. He pulls up, he gets out, he says, "Buckbee, you won't believe what happened." That was my cue point. There's some others, I can't remember others, but we never left the opportunity to work them over. One other one, he would come to the Space and Rocket Center, or actually come to NASA. And then he would save a day to hang out with me at the Space and Rocket Center or whatever. And he loved to go to the old visitor center where they had the people that got their drinks and so forth up on the hill.
The Officer Center?
Yeah, the Officers Center.
Officers Club.
That was his favorite.
Non-commissioned officers.
So he would brag about the fact that they'll like me coming because I'm so important, and they're officers, et cetera, et cetera. So we met him up there. He had his four-door Cadillac again, and we changed the bumper of his car to a tree. And of course, we were in there. Everybody was having their drinks. And Shepard was really attracting all the people. One end, you had a picture with him, and he was standing by for pictures. So he's ready to go. So we go out, and he gets in his four-door Cadillac, turns it on, pulls a bumper off, a complete bumper off of his Cadillac. So he looks at me and says, "I got to get to the airport. I got to get there. My airplane's leaving. Can you take care of it?" I said, "Sure, I'll be glad to." So I got the bumper, and of course I got it with the guys, and I said, I just got it off his car. And he's having that press conference at the Cape in 2 days. We need to get ready to have this there. Sure enough, we cleaned that thing up, polished it up, put his name on it, designed and supported by Alan Shepard Jr., et cetera, et cetera. We shipped that thing down to the Cape. He's at the press conference up there with another 2 or 3 officers. And just as they introduced Shepard, we have our guys bring it out, put it on the front, right in front of him, and introduced everybody in the room that, guess what, this is your bumper of your car you left at Huntsville, Alabama. That was one of our catch-ups we got. But he was a fun guy to work with, but you never knew what those original astronauts, original 7, were going to do when they, once they got off the plane, once they got out of the spacecraft, they became another individual. You never know exactly who you're going to be working with, but it was a fun time to be around. Well, listen, thank you very much for your interest in coming today.